Alright,
Okay, tell us when you're ready.
I'm ready. Go ahead and press that start button.
Okay, ready? Okay, everybody,
Just go.
be good.
Make and laugh.
Ready, go.
Hello, my family and friends. We are here tonight because I'm going to tell you a tale of Bubba, the Cowboy Prince. It's a fractured Texas tale by Helen Ketteman. Can you see it good?
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys see it good? Okay. This is a very funny story. And when I'm done, I'm going to ask you if this story reminds you of another story that we all have heard before in our childhood, okay? There once was a boy named Bubba who lived in Texas, and he lived with his wicked stepdaddy and his two wicked, icky brothers, Dwayne and Milton. Dwayne and Milton were the laziest, no good boys ever. I'm kicking my nephew there because he's being annoying. And they lived on a big ranch in Texas. Now, Bubba's wicked stepdaddy worked him so hard. He worked him as hard as 3 ranch hands, but his lazy brothers did nothing all day long. They'd sit on their ponies and give Bubba directions. Bubba, get those doggies along there, or Bubba, don't you get in those mud pies, because you know how Papa doesn't like it when you track dirt in the house. Well, Bubba, he didn't mind because he was a sweet boy and he loved ranching, so it really didn't bother him. Well, in the same county, there lived a real pretty girl named Lurleen. Lurleen owned the largest cattle ranch in the county. She was the richest, prettiest girl around. But Lurleen felt like she needed a fella to share her love of ranching. So she decided to hold a ball. So she sent out all these invitations to all the ranches in the county. In fact, the whole state. So all these ranchers got these invitations and they gussied up and they were getting themselves ready. And at Bubba's place, his brothers were getting ready and his wicked stepdaddy were getting ready, and they were bossing Bubba around. They said, Bubba, get our clean clothes. Bubba, shine our boots. Bubba, get the horses cleaned up. And Bubba was running around like a mad fool, trying to get all this work done, and he, of course, did a good job. And there they were looking really nice, and they headed off for Lurleen, Miss Lurleen's big ball. Now, Miss Lurleen, all she wanted to meet was a nice fella who loved ranching as much as her, and it wouldn't be nice if he was cute as a cow's ear, too. Oh. Well, as Bubba's brothers and wicked stepdaddy were heading off, Bubba came running out and says, well, can't you wait for me to clean up? And they said, you can't, chum. Look at you. You're dirty. You're stupid. You're ugly. Look at those clothes. You stay home and watch the cows. Poor Bubba. He was sad, but he decided that, okay, he loved ranching. So he hopped on his horse and he headed out to the pastures to go check on the cattle. And on the way, a thunderstorm went through. Texas has some pretty big thunderstorms, and a bolt of lightning came down from the sky and went whap! And Bubba flew off his horse, and his horse flew off his horse. That's how big that lightning bolt was. Finally, Bubba sat up and shook his head, looked around, and said, well, I guess I better get up and get to work. So then Bubba stood up, and then he heard a horse, or he heard a voice. And he heard this voice say, you should go to the ball. Bubba looks around. Who said that? He didn't see anybody but cows. So Bubba said, oh, that lightning sure took me for a ride. So Bubba went over to gather his horse and heard the voice again. You should go to the ball. He turned around. It was a cow. A cow was talking. He goes, are you talking? Bubba, he's just kind of thinking he's loopy, and the cow says, I said you should go to the ball. I am your fairy cow god, and I can help you go to the ball. Bubba's like, look at my clothes. They're torn and tattered. I can look at this hat. It's the dirty brown, beat up old hat. She said, I can take care of all that. And so she goes with her tail, and Bubba, he's dressed in the most glorious cowboy outfit you ever saw, in his cowboy Stetson. was a 30-gallon hat, and it was pure white like a brand new salt lick. So Bubba's like, woo, that's the best looking I've ever been. But then he's like, I don't, look at my nag of a horse. That's all I got to ride in there. And the fairy cow god went with their tail, and one of the cows turned into this big, huge, glorious white stallion horse. And Bubba was like, woo, that's some horse. So Bubba hops on that horse and off they gallop. Well, as he's starting to head out and gallop off, the fairy cow godmother says, all this magic runs out at midnight. You better be back. Well, Bubba, I don't think Bubba really heard that part. Off he rode. Well, it was almost midnight when he got to the ball by that time, and he jumped off his horse and he sauntered on into that there ball, and all those cowboys were looking at him like, who's that dude? I never saw that boy before. Who is that cowboy? And then Miss Lurleen was dancing, and she saw him and stopped. And then Bubba went out there and says, whips off his hat and says, may I have this dance, Miss Lurleen? Miss Lurleen says, oh, I would love to. So they started dancing. Everybody, all those other cowboys were mad. Who is this cowboy and all this gussied up stuff to walk in here at the last minute and steal their girl? Well, about 5 minutes of dancing, midnight came, and Bubba, who's dancing with Miss Lurleen, everything goes whoosh again. The fancy cowboy hat's gone. His beautiful, awesome cowboy clothes are gone, and he's in his tattered old jeans, his beat up old boots, and that icky brown cowboy hat. He looked dirt. He had dirt on his face. He probably had cow pies all over his boots. He was mortified. He turned and he ran to run out. And on the way out, he tripped, and one of his boots came off. Wasn't much left of that boot to begin with, so it came off pretty easy. And he ran out there, and his beautiful white stallion horse had turned back into a cow. Well, he hopped on that cow, and he rode for home. So Bubba got home, and he just went back to his way of life because he was like, well, I guess that was it. That was my only chance. Well, little did he know that Miss Lurleen, even though she saw what he had turned into, she still liked him. And she found that cowboy boot, and she decided she was going to find the cowboy who fit that cowboy boot. So she went around to all the different ranches looking for that cowboy, having cowboys try on that boot. And you know what? Nobody fit that boot. Finally, she got to the Wicked Stepdaddy's ranch, and you know, poor Bubba, he was the only one working. So he was out in the fields working with the cattle, and there was Dwayne and Milton just sitting around doing nothing, being lazy as usual. And they said, oh, that's my boot. Tried that boot on. Of course, it didn't fit. Even Wicked Stepdaddy tried that boot. Didn't fit. Well, then Bubba, he came in to clean up and get some dinner, and he saw Miss Lurleen there. Miss Lurleen saw him riding in on his old nag of a horse, and he only had one cowboy boot on. Bubba didn't have no spares. And she said, is this your boot? He says, well, yes, ma'am. He's all embarrassed and shy because he was looking, you know, pretty bad. So Miss Lurleen tried the boot on, and sure enough, that was his boot. She hopped up on the back of that horse, his nag of a horse, and they rode off into the sunset together, leaving Wicked Stepdaddy, Dwayne and Milton behind, and he and his pretty girl, who also owned the biggest, largest ranch in the county and had the most money, were hitched and spent their happy ever after days ranching together. And that's the story of Bubba, the Cowboy Prince, a fractured Texas tale. Does anybody know what story this reminds you of? Yes?
Cinderella.
Cinderella.
I say Pocahontas.
In this case, it's Cinderfella. I'm Anne Lambert, and that's the end of my story. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.